AutoSys Web UI installation in single server mode on Windows with an Oracle database. In this module, we will learn how to install AutoSys Web UI in single server mode on Windows using an Oracle database, configure it, and validate the installation. Prerequisites and considerations. To install Web UI, the recommended machine memory size is 8 GB RAM. An instance of CAEM must be installed and accessible. We recommend installing CAEM on a dedicated server. CAEM must be running when you install Web UI so that registration can occur. Otherwise, you cannot install Web UI. The password for the user IAM will be required during installation. REST Web Server, which is installed by default when you install AutoSys Workload Automation, is required to enable enterprise command line and forecast functionality with Web UI. Before installing, stop performance monitoring, antivirus, and anti-spyware software. The database schema should be set to case-sensitive before installation. AutoSys Web UI uses two databases, one for configuration, forecast, and monitoring, the Web UI database, and another for reporting, the reporting database. They can be the same database or two different databases, depending on whether you want to have reporting and the amount of data to be stored. AutoSys Web UI includes an internal database Derby, but is not intended for medium to large sites. We recommend using an external database, Microsoft SQL Server, or Oracle. The Derby database is not compatible with high availability. For an external database, the database must exist. An Oracle database user granted with DBA role, DBA table space select, $parameter select, and create session authority is required to create database objects during installation. If you specify Oracle TNS and the Oracle database is on a remote computer, copy the tnsnames.ora file to the computer on which Web UI will be installed before installation. Do not change the name of the tnsnames.ora file. After Web UI is installed, do not delete the tnsnames.ora file or move the file to a different location. Web UI allows the Oracle service name-based connectivity. For more information, refer to the AutoSys Workload Automation documentation. This video will demonstrate the installation and configuration of the AutoSys Web UI in single server mode on Windows. We will use Oracle as the database. We begin by validating the connectivity with all necessary components before the installation of the Web UI. Let's validate if we have connectivity to the CAEM server and the database server. We start with a ping to the CAEM server, and we get a response. We can reach the CAEM server. Now, let's validate there is connectivity through the port using a TNC command. We connect to the CAEM server using the port. Next, let's ping the database server. We get a response. We have connectivity to the database server. We do a TNC to the database with the port number. We connect to the database server using the port. Now we ping the AutoSys server, and we get a response. We have completed the connectivity validations. We are ready to start the Web UI installation. We go to the Windows AutoSys DVD. Execute the install program and wait until it launches. The installation wizard appears. Click Next to continue. Accept the license agreement and click Next to continue. Select the option to install the product and click Next. Select Custom Installation. The Express option is only for the AutoSys server. Select Next to continue. Select the Java bundled with the product and click Next. These are the components to install. Uncheck all the components marked by default. Select the Web UI component, also known as WCC. The additional required components, the Web UI collector, the Software Development Kit, SDK, and the Secure Socket Adapter, SSA, are selected automatically. Select Next to continue. Now, we provide the installation path for the Web UI and the shared components. We leave the default for both. We don't use FIPS 142 encryption. We select the Oracle database. Select the option to use the Web UI reporting module and create the database schema. For this demo, we select Oracle Managed Files, OMF, for storage management. You can choose the most appropriate option for your installation. Select the option to create the tablespace, database users, and roles. Now, we provide information about the Web UI database. We enter the service name for the Web UI database. And the database server name. We leave the 1521 port and uncheck the option to create the reporting database on the same database server. The Web UI database and the reporting database can be hosted on the same database server, or it is possible to use the Web UI database for the reporting database as well. For demonstration purposes, we selected the option to separate them. We provide an Oracle administrator user with the necessary permissions to create the Web UI database elements. We leave the sys user and enter the password. Select to use the same credentials for the reporting database. Enter the user that will be the database schema owner. We leave the default WCC admin and enter the password the user will have. This user will be created during the installation. Select the option to use the same credentials for the reporting database. We leave the default tablespace name WCC data. Now, we provide information about the reporting database. We enter the service name for the reporting database. Now we provide the database server name for the reporting database. We leave the default 1521 port. We leave the default tablespace name WCC data. We enter the name of the Web UI database user. We leave the default WCC and enter the password the user will have. This user will be created during installation. Click Next to continue. We enter the CAEM server name and the CAEM administrator user password. Click Next to continue. This is the information for the Web Collector component. We leave the default name and port numbers. Here we can select to start the services once the installation is completed or at system startup. We leave the system startup option for both services. Click Next to continue. The installation summary appears and shows where the installation logs will be written. The installation type is Fresh Custom. The components to install: the Web UI Collector, SDK, and SSA. The database to use: Oracle. The two databases, Web UI and the reporting database. We click on Install to begin the installation. The installation has been completed successfully. This is the URL for the web UI. And these are the installation logs. Click Done to close the installer program. Let's go to the logs directory. Here we have the installation logs. We completed the installation of AutoSys Web UI on a Windows server with an Oracle database. Let's start the Web UI and configure it. First, we go to Services to check the Web UI services status. The services are not active. Start the CAWCC service. And now the two services are running. One service depends on the other. We now open a web browser and launch the web UI. This is the web UI login page. We log in with the EJM Commander user. The default password is also EJM Commander, equal to the username. This user was created during AutoSys installation and has the highest privileges. It is recommended to change the password for the AutoSys default users after the installation. This is the web UI. Let's configure it. We go to the Configuration tab. We are going to create a new server. Enter a name to identify the AutoSys backend server you want the web UI to access. In case there are several AutoSys servers, the server name must be unique for each server. We enter the name of the AutoSys instance to which we will connect. The application server name. In this installation, it is the same server where we have installed the AutoSys server. The default application server port is 9000. We enter the AutoSys web services URL we got during the AutoSys server installation. The field tooltip displays the typical URL format, the application server host address followed by the defined port and AEWS. We can also get this URL from the AutoSys server installation log. Let's take a look at the AutoSys server installation log. We navigate to the installation logs directory. And open the detailed installation log. At the end of the log, we can find the URL. We copy the highlighted part and paste it into the web services URL field. Each server definition must specify a user ID and password for the monitor user. This user gathers job data from the AutoSys instance on behalf of all web UI users. First, we need to create the user in CAEM. We go to CAEM. We log into CAEM in the AutoSys application. Once in CAEM, we go to Manage Identities. We click on Users, and the new user panel appears. Enter the name of the new monitor user. We select AE Monitor as the name. Select the AutoSys applications so the user can access AutoSys. And enter a password for the user. Save the user. You can also add users by referencing an LDAP server like Active Directory as the source for storing users. CAEM will authenticate and authorize the user to access the allowed resources based on the user access rights defined in CAEM. Let's verify if the user was created. Here's the user. We go back to the web UI configuration and enter the AE Monitor user and its password. We save the server definition and then click on Done. And now we are going to validate the server we created. We select the server and then validate it. And we received confirmation the server validation was successful. Now, we go to the Credentials tab. Here we can define credentials for backend servers in real time. We can associate a web UI user with a user in an AutoSys backend server. With this association, a web UI user can execute commands from the enterprise command line and forecast in the AutoSys server without having to create the user in the server. For example, in the AutoSys server, we have a Linux user called teacher that we will associate with the EJM commander user. On the web UI, we enter the teacher user and its password on Linux. Select the AutoSys server and click on the Add option. The user was added and now needs to be validated. It verifies the user exists in Linux. The user is validated. The EJM commander user can now execute Linux commands in the enterprise command line and forecast. We have completed the web UI configuration. Now, let's validate that the installation works correctly. We are going to create a test job. On the Quick Edit tab, select Create. And select the command option to create a command job. Enter the job name. And select the agent machine to execute the job. We enter the command that the job will execute. For example, the ls/command. We also enter the standard output file for the command output. And the standard output error file. We also enter the owner of the job. This is the user that will execute the job in Linux. And then save the job. Now, we go to the Monitoring tab and create a view to list the jobs. Select the Add option and enter the view name. In this case, we enter the name All Jobs. Then, we create the filter condition. We select the AutoSys server and enter the filter condition. We filter by job name like asterisk to select all job names. We save the expression, the filter, and the view. This is the view. Double-click on it. Select the Jobs and Alerts tab. This is the job we have created, which is in an active status. Let's force the job to start and wait until it is completed. We check the status, and the job has now run successfully. Now we open the job details and go to the ls command output. This is the ls/command output. We have confirmed the job has run successfully. Let's now navigate to other options. We go to the Servers tab. And select the AutoSys server. Select the Open Scheduler Log option. This is the equivalent of the AutoSys log command with the E option to open the scheduler log. Now, let's look at the agents. Here we have the agent installed during the AutoSys server installation. Finally, let's execute a command from the enterprise command line. We select the AutoSys server. And execute the chk_auto_up command on the AutoSys selected server. With this, we validate that the credential association between the Linux user and the Web UI user is working. The command was executed successfully, and here we can see the output. With this, we have completed the AutoSys Web UI configuration and validation. In this module, we learned how to install AutoSys Web UI in single server mode on Windows with an Oracle database, configure AutoSys Web UI, and validate the installation.